Welcome to the Styleframe Saturdays podcast. I'm your host, Caroline Lee. Join me as I take a deep dive into the wonderful world of style frames and interview those who are industry wizards when it comes to this stage of the animated production process. For those who may not know, style frames are pieces of creative that are developed during the pre-production phase of an animation project, and they help creators and clients alike get an idea of the overall style of a piece. Sometimes the initial vision is carried through to the end, and other times it ends up on the cutting room floor. During this podcast, we'll discuss projects of all shapes and sizes, and the challenges, rewards, and lessons learned while developing what I like to call each guest's favorite frame. Before getting into the details of today's show, the Styleframe Saturdays team would like to give a quick shout out to Riverside and Anchor. They're the tools that we use to develop this podcast, and it simply wouldn't exist without them. There are so many great features to Riverside, but one of our absolute favorites is its ability to both simultaneously and continuously upload tracks to the cloud as they're being recorded. We can't thank Riverside enough for making our podcasting experience effortless, so we've got an affiliate link in today's show notes for anyone who's interested in checking it out. We also wouldn't be able to get this podcast to you without the help from Anchor. Anchor allows us to easily distribute this podcast to you on your favorite podcast platforms. And if anyone's interested in checking it out, there's a link in today's show notes where you can learn more. So now that you know how we're getting this podcast to you, let's dive into episode 7. Today's guest is a multi-talented art director who works in 2D, 3D, cell animation, you name it. She creates stunning work in every medium that she touches. She's worked with companies like Laundry, Elastic, and Hobbs, and has served clients like Hulu, Facebook, and Apple, just to name a few. She considers herself to be a motion design generalist, and with discussions about generalists versus specialists coming up in the industry lately, I'm so excited and curious to hear her perspective on the topic. Please help me in welcoming Michelle Grepo to the show. Hey Michelle, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. I'm so excited for this episode. While we've been emailing back and forth, I know I have said, I'm excited to have you on because, I've long admired your work and have gotten the pleasure to get to know you over the past year too, including meeting you in person and everything. So, I'm excited for this one. And I know when it comes out, the audience is going to really enjoy it too. I think it's going to be a really good one.
Thank you.
But
you're too kind.
For anyone who's unfamiliar with you and your work, would you mind giving our audience a little, introduction about yourself, what you've been working on, what you're up to, your background, so to speak?
Yeah. So I am currently an art director, freelance art director in the motion graphics industry. I've worked with various studios, Scholar, Laundry, Elastic. It's been an exciting journey. I actually did not start in motion graphics. And I feel like that's something that a lot of us share.
Mm-hmm.
So right off the bat, like in school and college, I was, working as a graphic designer, got some really good, strong fundamental skills, in that experience. And then I actually was a front end programmer for a good chunk of my career.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would do, front end meaning like CSS, like anything to do with, interactive elements of a web page, nothing like back end. That's beyond my brain. And, I've always been artistic. So over time, I started to realize that it wasn't fulfilling. And, the company I was with, really believed in me and my ability to, adjust and, learn skills quite quickly. And because I was trained as a graphic designer early on, it was like a natural move for me to become a designer in web design.
Very cool.
Yeah, they were very kind, and I was very fortunate to be a part of a smaller company that was open to that shift, and it was very smooth.
Very
Um,
cool.
and then from then on, I worked as an art director. I started building these, experiential websites for Warner Brothers and, Hakkasan Group, which is, I think they have like the Omnia nightclub or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was it was all really interesting, but there was a shift in the industry, and I realized that a lot of the medium um, wanted video content, you know?
Mm.
And I had always been interested in animation. As an art director in my field, I had, a large subset of skills. So I would be compositing, designing, doing typography. I even worked in After Effects. There was a little bit of 3D in there. And so it felt like a natural lateral move to go into motion graphics. And that's, I learned C4D on my own. And now I'm in the field full time and I love it. I think this is like where I should be. Yeah. Okay,
And how
cool.
long
So that's my
ago?
blurb. What's up, people?
That's the blurb right there. How long
Oh,
was
hold on, my RDOs went out. Okay. Got it.
how long ago was were you at the company where you're doing that front end development stuff? Um, because you've been freelancing for quite a while now, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had did like a 2 year full time at laundry in LA, and
Oh,
then I
okay.
went back to freelance. So it was freelance, full time freelance.
Gotcha. Oh,
Yeah.
wait. No, I'm probably getting this wrong. You did some of the front end stuff at laundry?
Oh, no, no, no. So
Okay.
the
That's why I was okay.
the full time job was at a company called I want to say Avatar Labs. It's been a while. My brain. Uh,
Oh,
but that was back in 2016, I think.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. It's wild. Like, we're in 2022. I immediately start to think of 2023 and I'm sort of like, that's almost like approaching a 10-year mark kind of thing.
Yeah. I've been
It's
in.
amazing how time
Mhm.
just sort of like passes,
Oh my
within the
gosh.
industry. It's like, wow, I've been doing this for that long. It just kind of hits you sometimes.
Yeah, that's how I feel about The Matrix when I think about its anniversary. No, I'm
That's
just
our
kidding.
guide.
Is this the 10-year anniversary? How many years has it been? It's 20, isn't it? When did. Never mind. We're digressing. Let's continue.
I was just thinking though, I'm like, when did that come
Yeah.
out? I don't know. We're gonna have to do our
Anyways,
homework after this.
yes. I base my career and professional experience off of how long a movie's been been playing.
And so now you're doing art direction.
Yes.
And you had just said, you're doing a lot of different stuff too, which is
Yeah.
why I'm really drawn to your work as well. You are this sort of multifaceted, multidisciplinary designer and artist. What was I going to say? You work in 2D, 3D. You've even done some cell stuff, which I think is really cool too.
Yeah.
Um, what what drew you to this work? Was it just being exposed to it somewhere, or again having an artistic background? Like, were you just sort of like, no, this is what I kind of want to like focus on?
Um, I mean, we all are creative as children, right? And like we all want to at some point. I feel like a lot of us want to be like, oh, I want to do movies or something as a kid.
Right.
But I think that artistic side of me already existed, but I was also very close with my brother growing up, and he is a software engineer. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, and like I wanted to be like him. I was like, sorry, that's my dog.
It's okay.
I wanted to be like him because I thought he was the coolest person in the world. And then I realized I had a penchant for technical things. And I would pick up on a lot of stuff rather quickly. And I think honestly, like everything culminating up to this point in my career is based off of me following my curiosity, and
Very
just
cool.
exploring that, whatever caught my interest. And I feel like sometimes you feel like that's a little bit like you don't have a plan in life, but everything I've done is I've wholeheartedly like invested myself into it. And you know all these little parts of me that have explored different facets of the industry have contributed to my career quite significantly, and I find that a blessing, like having all of this like experience. And
For sure.
it
For
also
sure.
helps when you're like mentoring too, because you
Right.
can pull from different parts of your life and relate to people in a lot on a lot deeper levels, on a deeper level. I want
Right.
to say.
That's so true. That's so true. And it's something, I can't remember what episode it was. I want to say it was Jordan Berggren's episode where, we kind of briefly talked about how every experience, whether it's directly related to motion design or not, like somehow adds value to your
Yeah.
overall sort of experience in the industry and in your career and stuff. And so I love that, what you just said. I couldn't agree with you more there. And I think we all have these experiences that really do shape us into who we are
Mhm.
personally, professionally, and stuff like that. So we take a piece of, everything that we've experienced with us everywhere else. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think it's very cool. Yeah, for sure. So I'm a generalist. I like to say that I'm a generalist by trade, but I feel like there's a lot of weirdness around that terminology. So
I consider myself a generalist too.
okay.
That's something that Ryan Summers talks about a lot, actually, that like everyone talks about specializing, and I think it's cool to specialize too, but he also kind of frames it in a way where generalists can kind of be specialized too, like it's
Yeah.
specializing as a generalist kind of thing. I forget how he words it, but whenever I'm reminded of that, I'm like, it's a cool way to think about it, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in a way we're kind of specialists in um not like what I want to say for being flexible, I guess.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
see it. Yeah, definitely versatile, flexible,
Adaptable.
adaptable. Yes, that's a great word
That's a
for it.
better word. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's funny you say that, now hearing sort of about your background of how you got into the industry and, some of the work that you were doing prior to motion design. Um, you considering yourself a generalist, I could very well see that not just in your portfolio and the work that you're doing, but now hearing that, I've always been drawn to, technology and, creative, and my curiosity, I think I can see that, just how you're just explaining this journey so far. So looks like it looks and sounds like it's a perfect fit, Michelle.
I mean, you know, when the pieces just fall into place. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. But yes, it is a very good fit. I think in my early days in my career, like I was always like I always felt like there was something a little bit missing. But I don't know. Motion design just it feels right, you know. And
Yeah,
there's so many avenues that people can play in and explore. And I think that now like the culture of the industry right now is very open to people being explorative. They want
right.
people's unique voices and they want to relate to each other. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, and especially with technology and stuff changing too,
Yeah.
all this Web3 stuff, I still am trying to wrap my brain around
Oh
it.
God.
It's not quite there. I don't know if I'll get there, but I'm working on it. But you're so right about that. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you there either. You had talked about how, you've done some staff and freelance,
Mhm.
how you started outside of the motion design industry and then fell into it. Um, I know you're based in LA. Have you always been in LA, or have you been elsewhere in the country or internationally as well?
uh like lived somewhere else.
Lived,
Or
grew up, hung
I
out.
I grew up in Colorado for about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
That
Okay.
was that was a big culture shift for me because like all my life like I grew up with, like hip hop, R&B, LA, street tacos, street food, all that stuff, like I'm always down for a street dog, okay? I'm homegrown LA. Um but when I when I was like 10 or something, I moved to Colorado and it was so different. Like the culture there was very different. And
Oh, wow.
again, like that whole experience kind of helped me be able to like understand different aspects of people's lives. It's not
Right.
just this little bubble in LA. Like there's a whole other like country out there with people with different values and such. So
For sure. For sure.
yeah.
Very cool. So you grew up in LA, were in Colorado for a bit, and then came back to LA.
Yeah, came back sophomore year in college. So
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. And
yeah.
well, I'm assuming, with regards to, college and everything. Were you at an art school studying front end stuff, or were you at like just like a, university or liberal arts college?
I want to say my school was more of a trade school.
Okay.
I went to the Art Institute.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah,
nice. Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Um, so, funny story. My teacher in high school was trying to get me to go to like a traditional art school, and then by the time, like I told you, like I loved technology, and also it was far more lucrative. I felt at the time.
Hmm.
And so I was like, no, I want to stick to computers and see where that goes. And I think I have a real edge here. So I went there, and the program at the time was called Graphic Design and Interactive Media, or
Okay,
Multimedia Design. So it was
gotcha.
like both traditional teachings and digital. And it was weird because when I went to school, people didn't really know what to make of it. And
Right.
so I was actually taught as a generalist in my education.
Hmm.
They taught me to program, they taught me to do graphic design. So I did like physical print. I also learned how to do illustration and typography by hand, which is very difficult and
Wow.
tedious. So
Wow.
yeah, um, that was not for me. um but it, and then we learned video editing. Like I remember having to make DVD menus in school, and I was like, I am never gonna do this. Like this is not
That's
something
right.
I want to do. So
But
anyways,
it's cool you had that experience doing all these different things.
yeah.
Um, and then, falling into motion design too. It doesn't sound like it was very coincidence. It just sort of always has seemed like, there's always been a generalist sort of curiosity and approach to like, the work that you've, contributed to and done. So it's cool to hear, this whole background of like how things kind of came to what they are now for Michelle Grepo.
What's
Well, we this is a design podcast. It's, we talk about style
up?
frames and
Nice.
everything. So, if it's all right with you, I'd love to jump into the main event and talk about the favorite frame that you'll be sharing with us today.
Yes. Okay. So this piece is called Firaga, or Firaga. It's got like a little bit of an Italian thing. Sorry, my dog. Um, um, uh, like I've always been interested in like title design. So, and the storytelling aspect that goes into this frame, into their style frames. Like I recently went to like the Motion Plus event, and there was an artist. The theme of that whole show was just storytelling in like a single frame, and
Mm-hmm.
I love that because it's like you can. Most people at first glance will just see something beautiful, but then
Mm-hmm.
if you deep dive into like the details of a certain frame, you can pull all this like information that relates to one another, right? And this was kind of something that evolved over time. So this piece actually was an experiment in After Effects that I just had a random thought one day. I was like, okay, you know what, 30 party plugins are expensive. What if I just try and make flame just happen in After Effects? And there was like an evolution of playing around, and you know plug-in bashing in After Effects. And ultimately I came across this where is this shot? There's like a process shot, I believe I shared with you, where it
Mm-hmm.
has like a stacking of, is it like six shots
Yes.
of
Yes.
the evolution of this flame that I was trying to create.
Mm-hmm.
And one minute, can I just pull it up? Pull it up right now. Okay, no, okay. Um, and I thought it was really beautiful, and then I found this photo by Fanny Latour-Lambert, who's a French photographer, and she photographed this beautiful model called Vittoria Tretti. And I was like, okay, I've always been interested in fantasy. Like, I love fire as an element. Let's combine the two and see what happens. And over time it kind of evolved, and I was like, okay, well, what if the fire was like a mystical like I don't know, some sort of like fire crown or something. And there's
Mm-hmm.
like earlier versions where like I literally have it shaped as like a crown on her head. You won't see that here because it was ugly. It was just a little too cheesy. And like I like nuance, and I like playing with asymmetry, and just like figuring out the balance of a frame.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that has always stuck with me ever since I was like a graphic designer and even like a web designer. You have this canvas and you have to balance out the frame somehow.
Mm-hmm.
um and I was like, okay, well, what if the crown just like went here? And I love those like subtle fashion details of like contouring of like the natural flow of the face and the peaks and
Mm-hmm.
the valleys. And so eventually it evolved into like this kind of like flame mask that would just kind of exist on her head.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, like I was like, okay, well, I love light, and like what if you know this is like an entire universe, and she has a king by her side with equal power. And that's when I created the man at her side, who is Benjamin Clementine. Let me tell you, this man is a gorgeous man and an amazing musician.
Oh, I didn't realize he was a musician.
Yes. So Benjamin Clementine, if you haven't listened to him, please give him a shot. He actually has his latest track, Nemesis, was featured on the morning show title sequence. So if you're
Really?
familiar with that music track is actually him.
Oh, very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And he like just he's so suave, and he had this like presence, like, of grandeur in this pose that he's giving me. And I was like, okay, well, they're both in a similar pose, right? And so they complement each other. And it
Mm-hmm.
was this evolution of like, okay, so now they are a couple, they are a unit. And then and then I was pulling in details about mysticism and fantasy, and a lot of that literature, or that like era, it focuses on ornate details. And I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking, okay, Baroque period, that'd be cool, like
Right.
create a world based on the Baroque period. And so I started developing like all of these. I started gathering all these assets to kind of like frame them. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if this was the title sequence, we would showcase the main characters in some dramatic, cool, slow camera move way. And I was like, okay, this is the shot. We're focusing on these two people. And then what kind of story do I want to inject into this frame? And and so I was thinking, okay, well, like chiaroscuro is a beautiful medium, or not period, but like it's beautiful, and I've always wanted to play around with it, and it lends into the whole light aspect, and from light comes fire, and so it's all these kind of like webbing ideas connecting into
Mm-hmm.
one larger one. Um, and so I started pulling like Caravaggio and Rubens, and who else is in here? There's a lot of like
Yeah, there's a lot of
uh
classical artists in here. Yeah.
yeah, there is. But it was like there's all these like elements of like flame, and I wanted the supporting characters around them to sort of show respect and adoration to the main focus. So if you look at the shot, you'll see how they're all attracted to a single light source.
Oh yeah.
The woman on the bottom is bowing because she's revering their power as these mystical figures with
Mm-hmm.
major influence. And that kind of like blended the story. It's like, okay, these two people are significant. They're a guiding light in this society that I'm creating. And this frame kind of lends into that storytelling where it's like even picture frames are revering them,
Right.
so
And what I
um
love about this piece too is that, it started out as, I love how you just said, it's sort of this like idea of webbing things together, right? That it started out with, focusing on the the aspect of like, I want to be able to create fire within this application without having to purchase all these,
Yeah.
separate plugins. But as the idea starts to come together and the flame becomes like a focus, and then we start to focus on sort of this Baroque, classical, mystical theme, what I think is really cool about this frame too is that this fire is, because it's a light source, obviously, it's creating like this really cool texture to the frame as well. Like you're getting some texture from the frames that they're, that all these characters are within. You're getting some texture from like the wall, or, the backdrop that they're on and everything. And you're getting the detail out of the frames themselves that the pictures are sitting within. And I think it's just, again, you and I were talking offline about, like coming onto the podcast and everything. This is, why I was so happy that you were willing to come on, because you just have this really beautiful way of just compositing all these elements together. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about offline, we were like, what you had said was, just the combination of different mediums and being able to
Right.
put it into like a single shot. And I realized after you had told me that a lot of my projects do that. not just like my professional ones, but my personal projects literally are a combination of different mediums that I have just playing around with. Like,
Right.
you may not know it, but the lighting in here is based off of a 3D recreation of this scene. Because,
Yes. I was reading that
yeah,
on your website. That's really cool. Yeah.
yeah, because, like I can photo composite, for days on end trying to make the lighting, accurate. But I was like, I can literally just do this like in 10 minutes in 3D and just pop out, the lumen channels and just, composite it on top of it. It's like that. So
But that's an
little.
example of working smarter and not harder either, too,
Exactly. Yeah,
right?
yeah. But that's why I think being a generalist is also very valuable, because you can pull all these tricks to design one frame. So like, yeah, I'll get hired as a designer, but what I'm doing behind the scenes is 3D, photo compositing, graphic design, illustration, things like that. So
Right, right. And, as a generalist, working on animation and style frames and all these types of elements, is there one tool in your toolkit that you use the most, or because every project's different, you just sort of approach it as, like, well, we'll see what fits the job kind of thing?
I definitely have a go-to toolkit depending on what I'm doing. I will say the one thing that I love what is it called? Sapphire sharpen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a big one that I use a lot. I love roughen edges and simple choker. That's another one. No, I don't know. I love.
Do you have like a certain process that you like go through every single time you work on a project, whether it's like, style frames or jumping right into animation? Is there always sort of like a way that you approach things, or is that different as well?
um I would say, well, animation is quite different because then I would be inheriting someone else's project, right?
True.
Um but I mean, regardless of what I'm doing, I'm always like organizing things to my benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'll take a frame, um, and structure it. Structure is very important to me. Actually, I've realized throughout my careers, I may be flexible, but when it comes to working, I love structure. I actually thrive in it. Not to say that I
Nice.
can't be adaptable, but I just feel like things just go much smoother if there's ample preparation time, which is most likely not the case. But it doesn't hurt to put in at least a little bit of like 30 minutes just to inject a little bit of structure into your
For sure.
projects,
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
that be like cleaning up your After Effects file or cleaning up your folder structure for like whatever you're receiving.
Mm-hmm.
um you know yeah, that's a big one. When it comes to design though, like if I am designing something that my mentor had taught me, was because I am a visual person and I react to a lot of things oftentimes. much like this flame project, I feel like a lot of it was like a reaction of what I was seeing. um, he told me, just put everything on the canvas, anything that you can think of, just dump it all in there, like all your necessary elements, and then things that pop in your mind, and then start to play. Like achieve like the bare minimum, and then add, subtract, mess around. Because early on when I was a designer, I used to struggle with overthinking. I'd be like,
I guess,
oh,
yeah.
what does the client want? But what do I think looks good? What does my art director want? What does my creative director want? And it helped me get past that whole loop of like
Mm-hmm.
doubt and uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And once I had all the elements on there, it was just like Lego blocks or like collage, because at that
Very
point you're
cool.
just kind of messing around. And from then on, you can react to some things. It's easier.
Right.
I feel like our medium is a very emotional medium. Like we respond to it emotionally, and those emotions and spark like intellectual conversation, and that's brilliant. But like when you're designing and you see something in front of you, you can react to it a lot easier rather than like thinking it in your head first.
Definitely, definitely. I love that what you just said about your mentor too. I think that it's funny. I feel like I had a similar conversation with Julie Kraft, bits and pieces about what you're talking about here as well. And she was kind of saying similar things in that she was sort of just like, I like to have things like a little bit messy to kind of then pull things together into a cohesive project. Um, and it's funny you say the stuff about structure too. I feel like for myself, and this is something I said with Julie as well, that, you know, I am just like you, I thrive on that structure as well. But it's such a good reminder, especially what you're saying about your mentor too, to just really kind of put everything on that canvas, because the idea of what you had originally might not be what you end up designing after all. So that was going to be a follow-up question I was going to ask you too. You probably had an idea in your head of how you wanted this frame to look like. Is what you rendered out what you had envisioned when you were sort of putting this idea together?
Um, it's actually better, you know, which is surprising because a lot of times we think it's like poo poo when it comes out. I feel, how we designers are. It's like just like, oh yeah, I made this thing and I spent like 20 hours on it and I don't like it. But no, like this one was a rare occasion where like I actually really love what I made. And it's kind of a shame because like a lot of people, it doesn't get a lot of traction on the internet. Like people are just like, oh yeah, that's cool. um but for some reason like I can't let it go, and I love it because it's not only like beautiful to me, but it's just like a culmination of skills that I have acquired over time, and I applied it, and it was through an experimental process, and I think that's really beautiful. I think it's natural and it speaks to like what I enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
the types of like design that interests me. um I don't always get to play in this style, but I do love it. And I think that's why I am attracted to title sequences, because it's kind of in the same vein.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
No, I love that you just said that too, because when I do think of your work, I do think of illustrative,
Yeah.
graphical pieces. And the fact that actually a piece like this is like really where your heart and passion is really cool to see. So again, let's go back to, the whole generalist thing. The fact that all of these different, you can do any style that's thrown at you is really cool.
Thank you. Uh, that's very flattering. But thank you. I appreciate
Well, because I
it.
feel like there are people out there, artists, designers who also have, maybe get hired for their style too, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I personally feel like I'm not one of those people. I feel similar to you in that I'm sort of like, well, if this is what so and so wants, I can try to create something within that style or look or mood. But when I think of myself and my own style, I'm sort of like, do I have one? I don't even know if I do. Like, I feel like my work kind of is a little all over the place. Because again, like you, I'm drawn to different things and I'll just kind of jump on, where I'm needed.
Yeah. I totally relate to that 100%. Um But in terms of style, like, I yes, there are people out there who like have a very unique style, but I don't know. Even as journalists, like there are things that seep through that are just a part of our core.
Mm.
Like I don't know if you noticed, but I have a lot of fire stuff in my portfolio. I like fire. I think it's a beautiful element, and it's because I'm attracted to light. It's the whole thing about like chiaroscuro, like favorite favorite of that period.
Right, right.
What was it? Raised by Wolves. That title
Okay.
sequence. Love the
I don't know
lighting
if
in
I've
that.
seen it
Oh
actually.
god, it's beautiful. So beautiful.
Now I'm gonna have to go watch it after this.
The moment when I saw it, I was just like in awe. Like I think I replayed like just the title sequence when I was watching the show. But anyways,
Well, it's funny you say that though about light and stuff too, because I feel like a title sequence, and I'm sure this is, other people have similar um, favorites and stuff like that too. But I feel like a piece that always comes to mind with regards to title sequences is Westworld, and
yes.
that's like that whole light play thing too, right? So
Mhm.
it's light is huge and it's
Yeah.
important, and you don't realize how much it affects a piece. So again, with regards to the frame that you chose to share with us, it's amazing how it's not only the idea behind the piece and brought out this larger idea that you started to explore, but that it again just how it illuminates the scene and it creates these like just other textures and stuff, and how it's everyone in the scene's interacting with it. It's just so cool. It really
Thank
is.
you. Thank you.
Well, and to
Finally.
that,
No, I'm just
we're giving
kidding.
it the attention that it needs, Michelle.
I got
um,
you, baby. Just talking to my
but
frame. Weird.
but going off of the light again, the fire that we're talking about, how did giving yourself the constraint of working entirely in After Effects and focusing on creating this fire aspect affect your design decisions for this frame?
What's funny is the longer that I've been in After Effects, the more I realize that because I have a graphic design background, like
Mm-hmm.
compositing is massive. I had to do like tons of photo manipulation when I was, a graphic designer and even a web design. That's something that's always been like probably one of my strongest skill sets. I don't utilize it as a profession like specifically, but it or like just like I'm getting hired as a photo manipulator. No, that's not me. But I do use it constantly. And the more that I've worked in AE, the more I realize a lot of hacks kind of translate. Like there are things that you can do in After Effects that kind of lend into that. And so as far as design decision goes, I feel like I have more play in After Effects when it comes to this stuff. And I didn't feel limited when I was experimenting. Uh, well, kind of, because you can't really paint in After Effects, but
Mm.
um, there was this kind of process where I was like working on the flame, and I was like, okay, I realize that I've got this thing that I really like, I want to add to it, um, and it was just I don't know if I'm answering this correctly, but I didn't feel limited because I knew I was confident I could bring in an asset to combine well with what I created in After Effects. And
Nice.
so it's just kind of that blend. It's there's when you the more you work with a program, the more you have more confidence that you can hack it. And I think it's so funny when people are like, do it in post, and it's like, yeah, okay. You can do a lot in post, but there's like this joke that it's like a terrible thing to do, but it's like I feel like a lot of my, especially in this one, I was like, everything's in post, just hack away, make it look
Right, right,
good.
right.
Yeah.
And with regards to this project too, were there any challenges and or rewards that you experienced? Given that it was actually also a personal project too, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Challenges. Man, okay, in terms of like style frame design, when it comes to a personal project, I feel like the only challenge is yourself. Um, when I was making this project, I was just fresh into the industry and I had a lot of doubts about, like, oh, I have to be this person and that person. I have to have this level of skill. And, one day I was just like, I just want to play and like figure it out. And see where it leads me. And it developed into something really wonderful. And I think getting out of that like doubtful mindset is helpful. It's very difficult, especially as artists, because we're so emotional sometimes. And that's not bad. I think being emotional is necessary in this field. You know, um, Temperance of emotion is absolutely necessary too,
Mm-hmm.
but that's a whole other topic. Um, yeah. So getting past your own negative mindset. Technical challenges on this one, not so much because I didn't really know what I was trying to achieve. I was just kind of evolving
Mm-hmm.
um, an idea over time. I think if this had been for a client, there are a lot of constraints that probably would have come into play, and there's a lot of stress involved in that. So I I, I really couldn't say any challenges.
And like the biggest reward, was it just the fact that you were able to like approach it saying like, hey, I just want to create this element entirely in this application, or did it become, something a little bit more bigger and meaningful than just that at the end?
um, the biggest reward was just seeing the end result in this piece. Um, I don't know. It's weird. Like, out of all of my projects, like, I'm really satisfied with this one for some reason. And I think it's just because it's something that I react to positively, and then I realized that, oh, I made this. Like, I made this. I was like, I did it, And at the time, like, I wasn't that confident in my 3D skills. I said I could say I was like proficient in After Effects at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And then what had come out, like, I was like, this looks really good and I feel good about this. So that's the
That's
reward.
awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that this was a piece that you had worked on like early on, when you had started in motion design too. So, I mean, it feels pretty timeless at the
Oh,
same
thank
time.
you.
Like, it again, I think it just speaks volumes of your work and your your approach to projects and your technical skills and everything. You could have created this yesterday,
Oh,
and it holds up. No, seriously, I think it's a really cool piece,
thank
and
you.
it's beautiful. It's beautifully composited, designed. You name it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this has been so much fun chatting with you about this project, Michelle. I'm so glad that you chose it. I'm so glad that you were able to join us on the show today. Again, I've just loved talking about this project with you, learning about your background in animation and motion design, and what you've been working on lately. If people want to connect with you and learn more about what you're working on, what's the best way for them to do so?
Oh, you can DM me on Instagram. My Instagram name is my name, Michelle Grepo. Or you can email me at hello@michellegrepo.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Michelle. It's been a real treat talking with you and learning about some of the stuff you've been working on, learning about this personal project of yours. We'll be sharing links to some of the tools and resources we mentioned here for our audience to check out. But that wraps it up for today, everyone. Feel free to email us at styleframesatpod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think of the show. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, if you like what you see and hear here, don't forget to subscribe, share, and review the show on your favorite podcasting platforms as well. Lastly, come connect with us on social. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you again, Michelle, and we'll see you all in the next one.